Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Daily Objective brought to you by the Ayn Rand Center UK, where we talk about everything and apply the concepts of objectivism to pretty much current events, to any issue that you might find in your life. Sorry for the late start today. It's been a very busy day for all of us. I'm here with my partner in crime, James Valliant, and today the topic is going to be, should there be an upper limit for politicians, an age limit for politicians? I think we've all seen the news recently. I mean, for Biden, it's been a constant stream of gaffes and unfortunate events, watching him muddle through international events and speeches. Mitch McConnell recently had a very strange and unfortunate medical moment, which we're going to show you in a few minutes. And of course, Dianne Feinstein, famously 90 years old, just got over shingles and is apparently quite confused when she's in office, and an unelected official had to tell her how to vote. These are frightening things because Mitch McConnell is the minority leader. Dianne Feinstein is a very powerful senator from California. And Biden is, of course, the most powerful person in the world. He's the president of the United States. So the question is should there be an upper limit to the age? Now, before James unpacks this for me, like he always has to, I want to say there shouldn't be an upper limit to age, but there should definitely be competency tests, because we have a senator from Pennsylvania, Mr. Fetterman, who had a stroke before the campaign and yet was still voted into office, even though he has issues comprehending the spoken word. And we don't even know how much he can comprehend the written word. He seems to have deep cognitive issues. My heart goes out to the guy, even though he's politically the opposite, polar opposite of myself. But he's in very deep straits, and I don't think capable of governing or voting. So I would say no age limit, provided the person's vigorous and cognitively capable. There should be definitely an age limit on the bottom section. Our founders understood that. That's why representatives have to be a minimum of 25 years old, senators 30, the president 35. They understood something about life experience and governing human beings that I think the modern generation doesn't. But James, do you have a different point of view than me, or are you sort of on the same page? And maybe after we discuss this, or maybe when do you think we should show the Mitch McConnell video, because that's a pretty frightening.
Show it. He really had a remarkable brain freeze the other day in front of the press, and he is the leader of the Republicans in Congress, so it's really astonishing. Let's take a look at that if we can, Daniel.
Yeah.
After finishing the NDA this week, has been good bipartisan cooperation and a string of
Wait a minute. Are you good, Mitch?
Okay, Mitch.
He's checking.
Anything else you want to say, or should we just go back to your office? Do you want to say anything else to the press?
Go back.
Go ahead, John.
I'll take.
Is that hard to watch or what? That's just brutal. His colleagues are, you just want to go back to your office or what? And he stopped in mid-sentence, and he floated off. That clearly shows there was a medical moment. I don't know if one incident by itself that is a disturbing one. I think anyone looking at that would have to be concerned and sympathetic for whatever's going on with Senator McConnell. Again, not someone I tend to agree with a lot of times, but that does indicate that there's a problem here. I do agree with you. I think there shouldn't be an upper age limit. The statistics on senile dementia are pretty straightforward. Dementia is, of course, more prevalent among older ages, but only about 3% of adults between 70 and 74 have dementia. That was in 2019 when they last did this study, compared to 22% of adults from 85 to 89, but it becomes a third of all adults when it gets to 90 and older. So a third of all adults over the age of 90 do, but 2/3 of adults over the age of 90 do not suffer from senile dementia, which is an interesting fact. I have known people who were in their 60s who were seriously losing cognitive capacity. And I
Mm.
have known people, I went to a men's retreat once several years ago. It's put on by the Men's Center of LA. I met a 99-year-old scholar. 99 years old. He could physically keep up with all of the young guys, with all the activities we were doing, and he was sharp as a tack. He could quote Plato and Greek from memory. 99 years old. And so I think to myself, well, and he was an inspiration to all of us younger guys there. That's what I want to be. I'm 99, sharp as a tack and able to keep up with the young guys in the physical activities. So it's possible. There's 80 and then there's 80. You know what I mean? Now, when it came to the president, very interestingly, the founding fathers did give us age limits, and you correctly stated the age minimum age limits for federal political office. As time grew on, it became clear with cases like President Wilson, who did have a serious health issue when he was president, and behind the scenes, without most people knowing it, his wife was making most of the major decisions, organizing things at the White House, as the president really wasn't the president for a while, the great President Wilson. In the wake of things like that, in the wake of other incidents like that, we added an amendment to the US Constitution, which took into account a president's becoming disabled physically or mentally. We do not have the equivalent yet for United States senators.
Now, this amendment, the 25th Amendment you're talking about, was talked about quite frequently during the Trump administration, but nobody's whispering that anymore for Biden. Now, why is that?
Crazy. Biden is really disturbing, frankly. It was before even the campaign. The man was prone to gaffes. He was never the sharpest tool in the shed. He claimed to be one of the top graduates from his university and his law school, and it turned out he wasn't. He cheated in law school. He plagiarized whole speeches from Neil Kinnock, the Labor Party leader. He was never really, he was a copycat and a liar. But then he had that brain surgery, as you'll recall. And ever since
right. He had an aneurysm or something, didn't he?
He did, and he had to have very serious brain surgery. And after that event, I myself noticed that what might have been simply low IQ had turned into real confusion. And it's only gotten worse and worse since then. And I think it's obvious in my mind that other people are making you look at those cards they give him. They give him the most simple instructions. Turn to your left. Now introduce the person. They have these really like kindergarten lessons, that they have tracked out for him so he knows what to do every time he makes a public appearance, which tells you something right there. The man's statements and confusions have only gotten worse. So I do think that there has to come a point where that kicks in with Biden, obviously, and it is more of a concern with him than I think any of the presidents in my lifetime in terms of mental capacity.
Now, I've noticed something. This may be a bit of a divergence from what we're talking about, but this seems to be this kind of lying about the health and well-being of the president seems to be quite a Democratic trick. I mean, they did it with Wilson. Now, apparently Wilson had the Spanish flu before he went to negotiate the Treaty of Versailles. And he was hallucinating at the time. And many claim that because he was in sort of a strange state of mind, that's in part what made the treaty so unsatisfactory for the Germans. And then, of course, he had the stroke and his wife was running the country for a while. But let's not forget that Franklin Delano Roosevelt was very ill for a long time. Well, first they hid his paralysis from most people, right? He was never photographed in his wheelchair. He had braces and he would be standing behind podiums. It was years as a kid before I knew that Franklin Delano Roosevelt actually couldn't walk. Because every picture I'd seen of him in a history book had him standing behind a podium or sitting in a car with his famous cigarette. But he had dangerous spikes in blood pressure that eventually led to him having a massive stroke in 1945. All of this health stuff hidden. John F. Kennedy, likewise, he was pictured in Time Life magazine as being the picture of health. We find out that he was on steroids and speed because he had Addison's disease and he had a debilitating back illness, which ironically, he was wearing a back brace at the time he was assassinated. And ironically, had he not been wearing that back brace, which he had to put on after having an illicit affair with one of his lovers, he probably would have been able to fall forward after the first shot and might have lived through that assassination. So history is very strange that way. And now we have Biden, who's clearly suffering from is a pitiable person to watch. I don't like making fun of him like the people on the right do. I think it's a terrible situation he's in, but he's placing us in danger as well by not ceding the throne.
That's the point. He's not like the rest of us. He's actually got his finger on the nuclear bomb. He's not like the rest of us. He's actually got to go negotiate with world leaders. Not like he has an important job or anything, and we want someone kind of on the ball for it. It is sad, and it is always sad to me when people reach that state. But like you say, it's in his case, it's really rather important because he's got the most powerful job in the world. I think we need an amendment to include senators. I think we need an amendment to include House members too, where there's some kind of automatic review if they become mentally. I mean, look at Dianne Feinstein. She was a no-show for a couple of months earlier. The Democrats have a one vote majority in the Senate were desperate to get her back on the floor of the Senate so they could get stuff passed because it's, one vote difference. She really is out of it. From what I can tell, she's not there. She's really not making decisions. And she is one of 100 senators with a very, very, lots of power and lots of influence. She's one of our most senior senators in the Senate. There has to come a point where people can say, wait a minute, the doctor says you can't do this. There are procedures within the House and the Senate whereby they can expel members, but I think we need a special procedure whereby those rules can get softened up, perhaps, if the senator or a representative is really losing it. And we now have multiple examples where there's concern about very important legislators not being on the ball.
Well, maybe they should have an election to fill that seat so the people can decide, especially in the House of Representatives, whether or not somebody's capable of filling the office. I feel a little bit strange about it being in-house because the power dynamics are so close now and everyone's so partisan that they're mostly interested in just keeping control. And not that I have very much confidence in the people of California to vote Feinstein out, but they could definitely. I think they would vote her out and replace her with somebody else who's equally bad, but at least it would be a choice of the people and not the machinations of the Senate and Congress trying to maintain their power structures. Here's a question, though. I agree with you. There should be something in place that subjects these Congress people to rigors. They have to prove that they're cognitively rigorous in order to get in. But what about we have lower age limits for office, which I think was very wise on the part of the founders because they experienced, of course, in European politics, infants rising to the throne and regents taking over for them and controlling the realm while they still had the nominal power. They found this to be, of course, absurd, and they wanted to avoid that. They understood how people evolved, and so there's sort of a natural evolution in holding office from a certain age up to the presidency. But what about lower age limits with respect to voting? Now, it used to be 18. The Democrats want to lower it to 16, which I think is absurd. I want to raise it. The conservatives want to raise it, but I think you shouldn't vote until you have a stake in the community. You shouldn't vote if you're living off of somebody else. You shouldn't vote if your college is being paid for by your parents and you have no concept of what it's like to earn money and pay taxes. They say 21. I say we go back to sort of the Greek notion that you become a citizen at 30. What say you?
Well, what's interesting is the founding fathers gave 25 as the minimum age for membership in the House of Representatives.
Yes.
And they were completely unaware, of course, of contemporary neurophysiology. The scientists tell me that our brains are only done baking sometime in our early 20s. By the time we're 25, in our mid-20s, our brains have only then really fully developed in most people. So most people's brains are still baking in their early 20s. The cake's not done yet. The founding fathers, 25 was when it basically kicks in. So, but you're right. I am not big on this open up the franchise idea to everybody. No, I don't think, of course, there should be any kind of invidious, irrational discrimination, women or race or religion or anything like that. That's absurd. On the other hand, when it comes to felons not being able to vote, I'm all in favor of taking away. They don't have no doubt. You can tell me they're going to decide what should be a crime and what the penalties of crime should be after they've done a serious crime? No, sir. That seems to me a perfectly valid way of disqualifying a voter. Although the left is screaming bloody murder, people in prison on murder, as far as they're concerned, should have the right to vote. And so we've heard that movement lately expand the franchise to everybody, including Charles Manson. That's the left's current position on things. And you're right. When it comes to age, I have no problem increasing the age minimum age limit for voting, frankly, until their brains bake a little more, as I was saying earlier.
And they're not in the academic mesh anymore. They're not caught up in the web of of the establishment. They're now out on their own, trying to make it on their own, and they'll see better what the establishment does to them, and they can make choices based on that knowledge.
It's really funny how, Churchill said something I disagree with on a moral basis. He said, if you're not, on the left, when you're a socialist, when you're young, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative, when you're older, you have no brain. I disagree with his view of what heart consists of and what is really benevolent for the poor, obviously. So that part of the premise is wrong. But he has a point. If you think about it for a second, when it comes to economic issues, the polls are quite clear. As the population ages, they become a little more responsible when it comes to financial and economic issues. Funny how that works when they get jobs and have kids and suddenly have to make real world practical decisions that way. They get a little more, economically sound in their thing. You're right. Life experience itself teaches people. And no, I think I'd be opposed to poll taxes. A lot of people have made the proposal that if you only taxpayers, only people who pay tax in some form should be permitted to vote. And sometimes my sympathy leans strongly in that direction.
Well, that would also include illegal immigrants. Of course, I'm not against immigration, even illegally immigrating here, because I think that's a right to move from one place to another. They do pay sales taxes. They may not be in the system quite. And in some states, they're allowed to vote in the state and the local elections.
So far, it's local elections. New York City and San Francisco have allowed illegals to vote, but it's only federal law does not permit it. So that these elections for Congress or Senate or president, illegals cannot. Only citizens can vote in those elections, but local governments can make the mayor of their city those elections open to illegals.
Okay, I thought there might have been a couple more states that did something like that. This isn't Daniel, Mr. Producer. We have to mark this as a potential future daily objective. I think we should talk about, is voting a right? And as the left claims it is, meaning it's as inviolable as your right to your life, or is it sort of a civic obligation that comes with certain obligations on your own part that you have to meet up to in order to do that? And are you disenfranchising people by saying, no, you don't meet the qualifications for voting? I mean, they've said no standard should be applicable as if it's a natural right, quote unquote natural right. I don't think those are our terms, but maybe that they associate them with. I think it's something else, but I think objectivists probably have a very unique perspective. If I have this perspective, I know other objectivists have something similar. Go ahead.
Problem I have with the taxes as a qualification to vote is that I'm not a big favor of coercive taxes. In my ideal world, there wouldn't be coercive taxes, and therefore that shouldn't be a qualification to vote. On the other hand, in our world, in which taxes are being extracted and money is being redistributed left and right, it is very tempting almost to go along that. If you don't have a stake in this society, what the heck are you doing voting? And in that sense, the framers had property requirements. For a long time, the franchise wasn't open to every adult white male in the country.
Yeah, people don't realize that. It's not only all these other groups like women and, of course, minorities that didn't have the right to vote. Most folks didn't have the right to vote. And in some cases, I think in Utah, I want to say, in various territories, maybe the state of New Jersey, women could vote, provided they had property or could demonstrate they were independent. And in some states, I don't even know if that was a qualification. But so voting was allowed in certain territories and states of the United States for women, but the franchise wasn't open to everybody.
This is true, nor was it recognized as a universal right by the framers at all. It's kind of a privilege of being a citizen of the United States to vote. And that's how the framers understood it. Now, voting, they did believe, was an important part of the consent of the governed. So they wanted the voice of the people. They wanted to, to sound out what was popular or not. They had a House of Representatives. They did think that we should have some kind of representative form of government. But on the other hand, they did not think that the franchise, in other words, the qualifications for the electors should be determined in each state. That's how the original Constitution is written. So if you can vote for the state legislature in California, then you can vote in federal elections. It's not the federal government who sets the voting qualifications. It's each of the 56 states who sets their own qualifications.
Of course, this is changing now. The federal government wants to start commandeering all elections, and people are agreeing with this now. They don't understand how powerful a check on federal government the federalist system is. To make states co-equal shares in power is a very significant check on federal power. Don't use it. Don't lose it, folks. You need this.
Now, I'm all in favor of term limits. If you want to put term limits on, I don't think it's a huge issue. I think it's that's the substance of their policies that more concerns me. But I also don't like these incumbents that stay in there forever and become entrenched, in effect, aristocracy. The Senate has 6-year term. It's not like the House where every 2 years you have to run for re-election. In the Senate, you got 6, and the power of incumbency is such, by 6 years, you got a statewide name recognition, and most of your competitors don't really have a chance. And so 90+% of incumbents get elected. And so people like Dianne Feinstein or Joe Biden, when he was in the Senate, they can spend decades. They can spend 30 years in the Senate, most of their careers in the Senate. Well, they are professional politicians.
Right, and I think that's terrible, given that we have a regulatory state, because then they become, the abusers of state power and potential profiteers. And in that case, it's dangerous. But sometimes somebody who knows the ropes, if they didn't have such a system, if we didn't have a regulatory state, could be a very interesting person. I have some super chats, and then we have to wrap it up real quick. Lucinda has been a member for 5 months. Thank you, Lucinda. Jeff Bannister has been a member for 15 months. No ageism unless incapacitated. I think he agrees with us in that sense. I am in favor of term limits. He agrees with you. I have a different position, and he has given us $4 Canadian. Thank you, sir. Regina has been a member for 15 months. Thank you for your inspiring work. Thank you, Regina, for being out there and listening and watching. Christopher Smith, $2.99 Canadian. That's all. He's just given us that. Well, thank you very much, folks, for your contributions. We hope we've cleared this up. We don't think there should be an upper age limit, but there should definitely be cognitive qualifications. You should prove that you are capable of doing the job that is set before you. You have to be in good health. And that includes mental and physical health. Any final words, James, before we conclude today?
No, just always a pleasure to talk to you. If you find these conversations of value, please consider becoming a subscriber to Ayn Rand Center UK. We are creating a worldwide community of serious students of objectivism. And if you think that's important, please hit like, share, comment, and do become a subscriber.
Yes, folks, make objectivism mainstream. It's a tribalistic world out there. We're the only ones who offer a rational alternative to the tribes. And so hit that like and subscribe button. And we have the Daily Collective coming up, Climate Catastrophe or Aliens, which will arrive first. Now, this is going to be an interesting topic. I think I might have to join in on this one. James, it's always great seeing you. And I can't wait to do it again with you. And folks, all you objectivists and non-objectivists out there, always remember to check your premises. Peace.